Hello YouTube, we are here with the project to build a little greenhouse for winter storage. We're out in here in Texas, North Texas to be specific, so you don't really need greenhouse to grow stuff, but we do need it to store our plant that don't take the cold very well during the winter time. So what we're gonna do today is build it out of this greenhouse is designed to be 10 feet wide by 24 feet long, and it's kind of in a little partially shaded area. Not my favorite, but that's close to house, so it will do the job. And we're building it out of the cattle panels. So here we have about 6 cattle panels, and they're all a little over 4 feet wide, so when you overlap a little bit it turns to be 24 feet. And I like 24 feet because it's anything divided by 4 or 8 in our country is a good thing. All your lumber is in 8 feet long or multiple of 4 is where you get the best deal. So we had a couple of so these cattle panel, if you arc them, they generally, if you stake them in the ground, they're gonna make about a little less than an 8 feet wide arc with a walkable or distance of about 7 feet tall. But we wanted a wider, so what we're doing is we're using a 2x12s, 2 of them stacked together. We're gonna tie them up with this 2x4s and then stand them up, and then that way we add about 2 feet of height, and that will allow us to make a little wider greenhouse, and it's still going to be walkable, about 7.5 feet tall at the center, or 8 feet. We'll see how much we get, but based on my calculation it should be anywhere from 7.5 to 8 feet. So here's the material, right? The 10 feet wide, that's the door side, and this is the non-door side. First thing we did is we pull a big tarp. This is actually an outdoor advertisement billboard tarp, so it should hold up in Texas, heat and sun. It won't, disintegrate basically, hey, baby. And so the material is we had some old 2x12 16 footers, so we bought 8 footers to connect and make a 24, and then we bought a 12 footer 2x4 for the side. So if you're starting, I think 2 12 footers going to be better to manage if you were building from scratch and don't have any extra lumber. For the end plates, that's the bottom plate, that's the top plate for the end here, and those are 2x10. We're using all treated wood here because in the summertime we're going to turn the same greenhouse, we're going to remove the plastic, and we're going to use it as a big trellis to climb all our creeper plants, all the melons, or not the melons, but we have like Chinese melon and gourds and stuff we grow that kind of hangs down, so it's easy to pick. And on the door side we only have a bottom plate 2x10, and then we're gonna have a door in middle so we can do 2x4 by 8 feet long here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna kind of leave a 3.5 inch space for this bottom plate to tie in, and we're gonna use these little connector pieces, and also we're gonna try and, like we said, we're gonna use it as a big trellis, so we want it to be strong. So we have the little this 2x2 cut out, and we're gonna kind of screw them right like this here. So this is where our cattle panel is gonna sit. That way it can carry the weight and distribute the weight a little better, and that way we can put some weight of the creepers plants on them. To talk about the supplies, so the tools we're gonna use, the impact driver, tape measure, hammer, and for most of the lumber work we're gonna be using this deck wood decking screws, 3 inch long. Try to use a star drive. It makes driving so much easier. I've used enough Phillips head and used curse words so many times. I don't want to do that. This is so much easier on your hand and on your brain. And for tying up the cattle panel to the lumber, we have this 1.5 inch galvanized fence nails or U-nails, and so you can use this. You can buy this from a Tractor Supply. This one you can buy from any home improvement store. And a knee pad. When we are on the ground, I like to use some sort of foam to kind of help me support my knees. And that's all there is to the tools and supplies, and we're gonna get to it. Okay, so I'm putting these 2x4 treated connectors to tie these two 2x12 boards together. I left enough gap to put that 2x4 at the end. Now these 2x12s been sitting out and they're kind of crooked a little bit, so I'm using the ratchet strap to kind of pull them tight. And as I screw these 2x4 connectors between the boards, I'm trying to make sure that both the boards are level and they're close together as much as they can. And then I put the screws on. So that's what this whole process is about. So this connector, the 2x4, is special. It's kind of butting these two bottom boards together. So on this kind of connector, you want to make sure the bottom boards are really tight and parallel before you screw in all the screws. And notice that every connector I'm leaving about a 1.5 inch gap at the top of the connector, and that is where those cattle panels gonna rest. So make sure you have enough room there. And I'm kind of going around this whole thing, and we're going to do the same process on the other side. Like I said, we have some crooked boards. The 2x12, anything treated board, they treat them green, so they sometimes are crooked, bowed, bent, all over the map. So these ratchet straps come in handy. And like I said, the butt joints are especially important when you tie them together. You want to make sure they're all can take the screw, so they hold it tight. Okay, so we kind of laid out all these mounting plates, kind of like that. We're gonna leave about 1.5 inch space at the top of these boards. So this is where our cattle panel is gonna ride on this angle right here. So we kind of laid out everywhere. Hey, no money. And we're just gonna screw them down. So that's all. Okay, so we had make some changes. We moved the location of the greenhouse a little bit. It was like there. Now we moved it like across. So now we're gonna raise the walls. I did went ahead and we're gonna put some T-posts in there just to keep the walls up temporarily and just to give it a little more beefy structure, because they're gonna be tied in with just 2x4s across, and it's not gonna be enough to kind of hold it together. They may go through wind and whatever, so we're just gonna be safe. And so we put an inside stake here already, a T-post, which was this standard your standard 6 feet post cut in half basically. And so we drove it enough so it will clear this plate here when we raise this wall up. And those full posts, we're gonna keep it an outside corner on all 4 corners, but we're gonna use 2 inside half stakes to kind of help us raise the wall. So we're gonna do just that right now. So this is the only operation where you may need a helper. So my wife is helping me hold the wall while I drive the T-posts on both the corners. Notice that we're kind of keeping a little bit away from the corner. Now what I'm doing is the center post, the inside center post, I drove it exactly at 10 feet. And now we're gonna try to square this entire greenhouse. And the way you do it is you measure the diagonal distance between the corners, and you can move that end board a little bit in or out to make sure they're even. And now we raise that second side of the wall, and I'm gonna drive the T-post again at the corner. And when you drive this T-post, try to make sure it's as close to the board as possible to keep it nice and straight and square. And then after this, we're gonna put those bottom plate together. We're screwing them in with the 2x12 walls. So I'm tying this these end plates 2x4 into the wall. I wanted to kind of show you something. So when you tie these things in, the end plate grains, anything, when you screw anything in the end grain like this, it doesn't have holding strength. So what you want to do is drive this at an angle. So that's what I wanted to kind of show you. So when you drive this from outside, you make sure you kind of go at a 30 to 45 degree angle into the bottom plate, like so, and just drive it a little more than you would otherwise. So it kind of locks into the end plane grain, end pit. So you're going across the grain now. So you're going at the angle. So it's gonna have a pretty good holding force here. So that's how you connect the end at a 45 to 30 degree angle. So now we're putting all the support, some vertical support to the framing members. These 2x4x10. Everything is locked in at this point. Both the walls are together, tied in on this non-door end as well as the door end with the bottom plate. So the next step is we're gonna start to put the cattle panels on. So we're gonna start with that entrance end first, and then we kind of tie them in with those fence nails. All the subsequent sets of cattle panel, we're just gonna put them on, and then we'll come back and adjust them later. And the reason is, remember, our greenhouse is 24 feet long and each cattle panel is 50-inch wide. And so that means we're gonna need about a 2-inch of overlap, or a little over 2-inch of overlap between each of the panels, because we only have 5 joints and we have to distribute about 12 inches of extra panel width across these 5 joints. So as you can see, at the last panel I put on had a lot of overhang, about a foot of overhang right there. So we're gonna have to fix that. So as you can see, I already put about a 2-inch of overlap between these 2 panels, and I'm gonna continue to do the overlap on every panel. And then once we set up, so the way I'm going about doing this is I overlap the panel, lock those 2 panels together, and then I come back and add extra nails on the panel before it. So that way if we need to make any changes on amount of overlap and stuff like that, we still have some wiggle room on a previous panel. So see, now I'm locking that previous panel once my overlap is complete, and then I put a couple of tack ones and then go to the next one, overlap, and so on and so forth. So on the last panel, all the other panel we kind of overlap on top of the previous panel. The last panel, it was a little shorter, so we were able to tuck it under the previous panel. Okay, so I think we were able to overlap it just fine. We kind of randomly overlapped. Some places we got a little bit overlap, some places we got a lot, but what we made sure that the ends are flush right here and over there. So, by the way, we are using this 1.5-inch fence nails for fastening this, guys. to the boards on the sidewalls. So we're just gonna kind of do this a little live here. So we're doing like every few like 3 or 4 wires, and some of the places I try to lock it like this at an angle, so give it a little more secure hold. See if we can kind of show you. So I'm trying to put it at a like a cross section of these two X that makes it. Okay, so we are done raising the panels. I guess, I don't know, you can see it in this, can't really see in the tiny camera, but well, from here you can see it's pretty. I'm 5'6", and if I raise my hand, I cannot touch the ceiling in the center. So I think that's plenty tall for me and my wife. And as you will see here, we kind of nailed every joint, overlapped a cattle the fence nails, a U-nail, barbed wire, and also a couple in the middle span, every panel. So that's how we kind of fasten all these panels on both sides. So now we're tying all the panels together. We're using the rebar wire, which is malleable, so as you twist and tighten the wire, it's not going to break on you. So every 4 strands we're tying 1 rebar, so that is plenty of tying together. So all 6 panels are now one monolithic structure, so it's going to hold up pretty good with the wind and movement and the weight coming from those plants on the top. So now we're getting started to close the non-door side of the end. So we're gonna make a kind of little a door looking structure right on top of that top plate, so we can tie it up with the cattle panel up top. And remember, you want to drive all the screws at 30 to 45 degree angle. That's what we're doing. And I try to drive, if I'm raising something like this, I try to drive screw from each side. And now we're gonna kind of adjust and check the dimension. And then another thing you want to do before you tie this door thingy and make the doors solid is put some sort of protection on the end walls of the cattle panel. We're using a 3/4 inch wastewater PVC. We cut a slit with the angle grinder cutoff blade, and now we're kind of mounting it on top of the end panel. And that's because when we pull the plastic over, those end panels is gonna rip the plastic. So that's why we do the PVC. And now we're gonna tie everything together with the rebar wire onto the panels. So now it's a completely hooked up with the cattle panel and that vertical structure we just framed. And to make it a little bit more solid, to give it some lateral strength, so it stays up in the wind again, we're gonna put a crossbar. So just got a crossbar 2x4 with a 45 degree angle cuts, and we screwed it together. Now we're gonna do the same thing on the other side. We're again going through that PVC pipe, putting it on the end of those cattle panel. By the way, those end of the cattle panel has like a literally that wire cross member sticking out about 1/8 of an inch or so. So if you don't put this kind of PVC, you can also use like a pool noodle if you're doing this project in the summertime. You can, that's a cheap alternative as well. But we're at the fall time here, so you can't buy those pool noodles, so we just use the PVC pipe instead. Anything works as long as it's not going to rip plastic that we're going to put on for the greenhouse. And now finally we're on the other end. We're going to frame the door opening. So we kind of roughly measured the opening. We wanted about a 3 feet opening, 36 inch. So we framed a little structure with 36-inch opening and measured the height so it will barely stick out. And if you notice up top on the top part of the frame, we have those corners cut at a 40-degree angle. So again, the plastic wouldn't rip. And now we're gonna, here we measure it accurately. So we kind of gonna use this fence nail to connect the cattle panel and the door frame together. And that way, because this door is gonna be opened and closed, so we want this side of the wall to be a little bit more solid than the other end. And the same thing, we're gonna use a couple of cross members to tie the door frame with the side walls here. That way things don't move and they don't gotta go out of square and stuff. So there we have it. The door frame is now complete. So now we're ready to frame the door. So for the door, we cut the 2 long side and 3 short side, connecting those long sides. Make sure you measure the opening and subtract about 1/2 inch. So you're gonna have like a 1/4 inch gap on all 4 sides. That's the way we kind of measured and cut. And again, we're using the screw at an angle to tie everything together. And we also cut down this 4 little tiny cross brackets out of leftover 2x4, so we can keep the door square after we measure it, after we build it. So, and then finally we're connecting the middle piece. So that's where all our latch and stuff's gonna go. So that's why we have that extra 3rd piece in the middle. We put the door in place. I thought I had the old hinges, but I don't. So we're gonna have to wait until we got the hinges ordered up and bought. But just to kind of show you, you want to leave around like 1/8 of a gap all around at the bottom as well, and we got a little bit more on top here, but that's fine. We'll be okay. So now we're ready to put the plastic on the greenhouse. So you can use the a special purpose polyethylene sun greenhouse plastic film. They'll last you about 5 years to 10 years. Or for our purpose, we're building a dual purpose greenhouse. We're gonna take the plastic off every summer to use it as a trellis. So that's why we're kind of settling on a cheaper alternative, which is a vapor barrier. You can buy the vapor barrier from big box stores. And they come in generally a 100 feet roll, 20 feet wide. So 20 feet wide plastic works exactly fine for our project with no need to cut it anymore. And so what I did is I left 5 feet, about 5 feet plastic on this side, the non-door end, and we kind of overlap. If you see, there's a seam there. And then we're nailing everything down with these 1-inch cap nails. Okay, 1-inch cap nail, again, you can buy it from big box stores in the roofing section. You can buy like this big bucket, will last you for several projects. And what we're doing is we're not cutting any plastic on this end. We're simply making like a fold down weave, if you notice, so the water won't puddle inside the plastic. So if we fold it up, the water will hold it inside the 2 layers of plastic. So that's what we want to avoid. And now once we tie in that end, we're gonna secure both the long sides with the cap nails. And when you're doing this, you want to kind of pull the plastic gently, tuck it nice and tight, and then keep driving nail about every 2 feet or so. And then you repeat the same process on the other end. And that should one other thing you can do after this greenhouse is built to avoid getting wind into this long side, you can kind of do a little layer of mulch so it actually will close all the seams touching the ground, so that way there's no room for wind to go in. Now on this end, since we have a door opening, what we're gonna do is we're gonna fold the plastic over and into the door opening, and we're gonna nail it from the inside. Okay, and about those pleats for the we're gonna make several small pleats instead of one big large pleat we did, and we same thing, we do fold down pleat. So as you can see, I'm kind of tucking the plastic with a fold down pleat and hammering the nail on the inside of the door frame. So again, to not let the water puddle into those pleats. And once we are all the way through up, you're gonna have to as you go up to the corner, you're gonna have to make a couple of modified wire cuts and trim off excess plastic. And on the top plate, make sure you leave enough plastic so again you can just fold it up and around the door frame and into the inside and then nail it in there. So that's the goal is to keep plastic really tight against the door frame, so as you open and close the door, it won't rub against the door and kind of wear out, right? So, and now with your leftover plastic, the final thing we're gonna do is frame our door with the plastic. So we're gonna, again, same thing, we're gonna tuck it out and inside, and we put our nails. And after all of the sides are nicely pulled in tight, we nail the short side later and finish up our door.